And hello, everybody. Good morning and happy Sunday or Monday for some of you, depending on where you are in the world today. I'm excited to be here, excited to get some stuff done. Let's go. Hi. Hello, everybody. Welcome on into the stream today. Let's go ahead and get some last minute things set up on my end. We're going to pop our stream window to my second monitor here. We're gonna set up some new screens here, and we're gonna turn the music back on. Certainly not least. As always, please make sure that you go ahead and check in to this event at our Global Hack Week check-in link. So if you check in at our Global Hack Week check-in link, you have a chance to receive a variety of swag, participate in giveaways, etc. So I'm going to go ahead and pop the link up on the chat here really quickly. So you can go ahead and join in right on there. And as always, for those of you who are tuning in from Twitch or from YouTube or watching back the live stream, I am excited to see all of you here. I'll grab my water. I'm ready. I'm going to go ahead and get logged in here. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and set up our repository, and also I'm going to set up our repository for this project and walk you through some of the things I've got planned for today. Need my two-factor. Let's grab. Should have done this earlier, but that is okay. It gives us a couple minutes for everybody to kind of get in here and get settled and get ready to roll. We're going to do a little bit so that on everybody's end it sounds solid. So that should be good to go. And then what we're going to go ahead and do is head to our profile, to repositories, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Share this window so you all can go ahead and tune in. So as always, if you want to take a look at some of the other things that we've done on previous Global Hack Weeks, take a look at my repositories or anything else along that line, you can go ahead and reach out on my GitHub, which I've also just added into the chat. So for anyone who's ever interested in taking a look at anything on here, that'll be your best resource. And all of the stream resources are going to live on my GitHub in the repository we're about to create. So all of the stream resources for this specific stream are going to live in this repository. So I'm going to go ahead and place it in my... I got accepted to Hack MIT, but I've only submitted one hackathon project before, so this stream is perfect for me. I am so excited you're here then. It's going to be a really fun one. I think we're going to talk a lot about coming up with good ideas, but also making things realistic. So let's call this one Idea to MVP. Cool. Description. This will be GHW August 2025. Discussing how to create high quality hackathon projects that are realistic and feasible. Cool. We'll just leave it as realistic. We'll make this a public repository. No template for us for now. For READMEs, we will add our README here. We will not yet add a git ignore, and for the license, we'll just add our MIT license, and then we can go ahead and create a repository, and we'll go from there. Cool. So now if you want to get the specific stream repository link, that's going to live right on here. All right, so for anyone who's looking for their stream-specific repository link, that is going to be in here. We'll go ahead and swap this guy out. So it'll be check-in and then repo will live here. And then we will do ask and then Q&A in the chat. Cool. We'll just go ahead and let this guy roll for a second. We'll leave the actual repo up for longer in a little bit. So we'll go from there. But all right, let's go ahead and get started. So we are gonna go ahead and divide this stream up a little bit and talk. Well, I think let's go ahead and start about, like, in this README, we're gonna go ahead and this is gonna be the README for the actual project we're gonna build out later in the stream, which I think will be fun. But to answer your question, this stream is going to be about creating high-quality hackathon projects that are realistic. So how to take an idea and then actually make it into a full-fledged product, or at the very least a minimum viable product within 24 hours. We're going to talk a little bit about MVPs, and then we're hopefully going to get some time at the end of the stream to chat a little bit about what to actually chat through making a project ourselves. So what we're going to do first is I'm going to create a new file in here, and we'll call this stream resources.md. And this lets us, of course, we'll go ahead and commit this up to main. Right now we're just using the GitHub web browser. It doesn't need to be anything super fancy. But in stream resources.md is where our file is going to live. So this is going to be kind of like a running notes document that we're creating on stream. For us to see, right? So this is where we do stream resources. If you are not familiar, here we are using Markdown, right? So to delineate these, I need to double check what my Markdown styling is. No. Yes, Markdown cheat sheet. That's exactly what I want. Perfect. There we go. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and pop this up on here just to refresh myself. Yeah, okay, cool. So yeah, I want slashes, or I want hashtags at the front. That's what I wanted. Not this. Or H1, I want stream resources. All right, so this is where we're gonna go ahead and create everything. Let's go ahead and also in here, add in some journal MLH resources / stream. This will be where the check-in info goes, if I can learn how to spell. So in here is where we're gonna go ahead and post the MLH Twitch. Right, so in here we do a list, of course. So then for our link, it's title. And so we do title Twitch. And then of course Twitch goes in here. Then we do YouTube. And then we'll go from there. This is also a great, this particular example is a great way of how to set up a really solid README super duper quickly, right? We're using Markdown here. Whenever we're done after this, we'll do Major League Hacking YouTube. Perfect. So going to Major League Hacking here. Perfect. Oh, we're live. Would you look at that? But we'll do youtube.com/Major League Hacking. All right, time for a quick water break. There we go. And then we'll do also in here our GHW check-in link, which is how you check into any stream to receive your swag items. I've talked about this a little bit more briefly, but I have the link up here somewhere. Events. 217. Yeah, perfect. Sweet. Just grabbed on my second screen. Awesome. And then in here, we're actually going to jump into the vocabulary. So I think the first term that we need to define is the MVP. All right, so now if I commit changes, just so you can see what this looks like, and so also you can access it, right? You can see the in-stream resources. I have the MLH resources and the check-in info, links to the Twitch, the YouTube, and the Google Hack Week check-in. And then, of course, we have this repository. Right, so that links us here. I can't check into this live stream. Let me take a look. It is possible. It says Monday. Hold on. Let me take a look here. Yeah, I'm seeing it now. There's a mistake on our end where it says this stream is from tomorrow. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and reach out really quickly to somebody on the MLH team. Let's get this one sorted. Give me 30 seconds. And hopefully we'll get a check-in. I should actually be maybe able to edit it myself. I'm going to go ahead and go offline for about 30 seconds real quick. To deal with this, so I can make sure that everybody else can check in, and then we will be back really, really soon. And perfect, we're back. Okay, cool. So now the check-in link should work for everybody. Hello, everybody. Same issue, can't check in. Yeah, so far we've just created our GitHub repo and done our intro, and then I had to step out for a little bit to get everybody checked in. But generally now you should be able to check into this live stream at events.mlh.io/events 12777. I'm going to leave it up in this version in a few minutes, and then we will go from there. But generally, let's talk a little bit about what MVPs are. So MVPs, this term stands for minimum viable product. Right. Refers to the idea of creating a project that is is focused on adding the least amount of features possible while still making a usable app that follows our vision. Hello. Zoom in a bit if possible. Awesome. Yeah, of course. Let me do... How's that better? Hopefully that helps a little bit. It looks like ants. Yeah. Is that better? Perfect. Awesome. So MVP refers to the idea of creating a project that's focused on adding the least amount of features possible while still making a usable app that follows our vision. MVPs do not need to sacrifice the quote-unquote heart of our product, but they should focus on one key user, one key kind of audience, or on one core user. One core need and one core feature. A little bit more zoom would be great. Let's try this. Cool. And then this is the idea of this goal. So one of the common ways in which you determine good features, so an MVP, right, like we're explaining here, is creating a project that is adding the least amount of features possible. So you are creating a usable app, but you are not building out like your perfect app. You are building out the bare minimum. And so you define your MVP often using something called the Moss cow method. All right, which stands for Perfect. Can we complete it with MVP after giving it some time, or is it limited to the skeleton only? So this refers to like when you're building out your skeleton, your initial skeleton should only focus on your MVP, right? Then once you are starting to develop, your goal is to still accomplish the MVP. If you get to a feature that's no longer an MVP, right, it goes back to the drawing board eventually. But if I didn't exactly answer your question, rephrase it, and then I'll help you out from thereafter. So then what Moscow stands for is the M. So you have must have, which is your M. This is critical, non-negotiable. There's an app cannot exist without this feature. Then we have your should have, which is your S. So this is greatly improve the user experience, but are not required for the app to function. These are the first features developed after the MVP is completed. Then you have our could have. Let's see. Nice to have, but not critical. Should be considered for future releases. And then we have the won't have, right, which is your W, which is not a priority for the MVP, not a priority either, not included at all. All right, so this is your idea of the Moscow method here. We're gonna go ahead and press commit changes. All right, so how we're doing here with your Moscow method, your MVP. Cool. Let's then go ahead and talk a little bit more about, right, so this, anything in the M is for the MVP. Anything in S, C, or W is not an MVP feature, right? So then the next part that you'll need to do to determine your MVP, right, is to kind of create your MVP blueprint, right? So blueprint here. Right, so then we'll do in here, we can do another heading that's like steps or design. Do our step-by-step guide. All right, so first we're doing our creating kind of our coming up with our initial idea. Then from there, you're going to determine the MVP. And you're going to break down MVP further using the Moscow method. And then from there, you're going to create MVP blueprint. So then you are going to do, this is things like wireframes or UI flow. Then the next decision here is your technology. Tech stack decisions. Right, so here are your tech stack. Can we have an example of an MVP with all of these incorporated? Absolutely. We'll go through one step by step, and then we're hopefully going to work through actually building it out together. So how to get an idea. Can we copy an idea from other projects from previous hackathon? How to take inspiration. So I would say the best way that I always recommend coming up with ideas is looking into like this initial ideation step. What I always recommend is the coming up with problems that you or people around you face on kind of a day-to-day situation. That can come with a lot of projects that are very frequently seen, like for example, scheduling assistance for college campuses or other similar resources, yes. But I've also found that you're the most likely to be the most passionate about your idea if it's something that actually affects your day-to-day life. However, if you have a bigger goal, right? Or if you are incredibly passionate about, say, animal rights, or you are incredibly passionate about gender inequality in technology, you are incredibly passionate about LGBTQ rights and access to healthcare, right? Whatever you happen to be passionate about, I think those are the best ideas usually, and those come from there. I wouldn't necessarily recommend copying ideas from other projects from previous hackathons, right? Because even if you look at a hackathon that happened last week, chances are that that idea, has A, already been done before, but B, it's been done well, especially if you are only looking at winners. However, what can help a decent amount is you go ahead and head to devpost.com, right? This is kind of your hub for a lot of hackathons. I'm going to go ahead and log in here to the Launch account. And I'm going to pick out, let's go to TerraHacks, right? So this is a hackathon that happened last weekend, an MLH event out in TMU, right? If you're looking at projects and the project gallery, you can see some of the projects here, right? Looks like winners have not been fully published yet. But you can go ahead and see some of these project ideas, right? What are common at this point, themes you're seeing here? A lot of medical, right? So if you're going to an event like this, right, you see best use healthcare solution as a prize. Generally, you should expect the fact that you're going to see a lot more medical projects in an event like this, especially if this is a high value prize. But then if you're looking at, personalized food feedback, right? Or things like that, right? That can be helpful. Then again, this is an example of everybody kind of almost creating towards the prize, right? Not to, call out any event of this in particular, but I think this is a great example actually of what I see very often versus, like one of the first projects I'm seeing that isn't entirely medical, Tourist Buddy here, right? Beyond the guidebook, beyond the crowd. So generally like travel companion, right? So trying to create a travel app. Have I seen a travel app before? Yes. Has this app stood out to me while looking here just because it isn't med related? Absolutely. Right? So you have to kind of analyze this. What else stands out to me? This guy. Analyzing daily poop photos, right? Is that personally something I'm passionate about? No. But in case these users felt like it was a great idea, then that can be a good idea in and of itself. Hopefully that answers your question. I know that's a pretty roundabout way of going about it, but hopefully that's helpful. Cool. What I like for initial ideation, and so what we're going to do now is we're going to work through our like initial ideation doc. So I always like to add and create a new file. So I'm going to call this ideation .md. So this will create another markdown file for me. And then, so initial ideation, right? So we're doing our initial ideation stage. I like to think of what is a common problem that you face at some point in your life. So then I will, for the purposes of this stream, let's narrow this further. Right, so that would be then, what is a common problem that you have faced at a hackathon? And I would love to hear from chat here, right? Like, what is a common problem that you have faced at a hackathon? I'm gonna go ahead and start kind of running through some of the ones that I have personally faced that I think are particularly noteworthy of talking about. And then we, of course, have coming up with a project idea, right? Which is kind of the idea of whatever. All right. Anyway, so for the purpose of this stream, lack of ideas, finding teammates, especially online ones, different time zones. Exactly. Right. So I want to focus on this one for today. We're going to focus on coming up with a project idea. If I can learn how to spell with. So this will be the focus of this live stream, coming up with a project idea. And then, so then from there, we go to our chosen problem, right? Which is coming up with a project idea quickly. So then you might think about like how you would like to then generate these project ideas, right? So you can do things like potentially create a hackathon project idea generator. That is kind of where that initial spark comes in, right? Where you have to kind of come up with an idea based on this problem. You're like, okay, what if I got a tool that helped me come up with this much more quickly? All right, so then if I have my hackathon project idea generator, all right, then the next step you want to do is ask yourself questions. Narrow down your project idea. So for my hackathon project idea generator, I would like for ideas to be generated based on emojis, tech skills, and overall vibes. Right, so it does not have to be a super serious idea all the time, but generally, right, so what does this look like? To narrow it a little bit more, right, so to then say, how will specific emojis grant specific ideas, right? So then you could do things like discuss, energized, competitive, fun projects, right? If you're going with more tired, you could do things small, impactful, relaxing, etc. You could also do health related here. If you do something more like curiosity, and then this is new technology, new resource, new resources, overall exploration. So then, right, now we have a general project idea. So based on emojis that we give, tech skills, and quote unquote overall vibes. Don't italicize here because I think it's funny. We're now going to go ahead and do our MVP determination. So like I talked about, your MVP needs to have one core user, one core need. We're actually going to do bold here. So one core user, one core need, and one core feature. Hold on for me for about like 2 minutes, and then I'm gonna go ahead and turn my AC down a little bit because I am very cold. I will be right back. Little emoji and I was masquerading as my little cartoon and I was masquerading as UT there for a second. Let's swap it back. Yeah, there we go. That's more like me. That's pretty funny. All right, cool. So then this is your one core user, one core need, and one core feature. And then generally you want to break the last part up into something that we call the MVP statement. Right, so this is your MVP statement. What's the quote in my Markdown. That's what I'm looking for. Cool. Greater than. Very cool. That's what I want then. Sweet. So we'll do our MVP statement and a block quote. Right. As always, what I like to do is whenever I'm working on a doc in general, I like to lay it out. I'll go to ideation.md now and make sure that it looks solid. All right. Which with this one, right, you're seeing this is not the best looking at the moment. All right, so we might want to do one core user, one core need, one core feature, and then MVP statement, and then your block quote. And then in here, right, then after you'll do your new, then after this we'll do our Moscow method. Cool. So for your one core user, right, this is where you are going to narrow it down to a hackathon participant, focus on high school and college, beginner / early intermediate hackers. All right, so our goal is not to come up with the next Facebook here. Our goal is not to come up with some incredibly insane, high-fledged, super duper fancy idea. Our goal is to come up with something that looks somewhat solid. So that's pretty much that. And then for one core need is quickly, right? So this is our first kind of keyword. I'm gonna underline here. How do I underline and mark down again? I keep forgetting. It's our table. And this is like, this list does not have everything I need. So underline in markdown, please. It's you. Well, I guess this also technically supports HTML. Very nice. Oh, I should show that to my students. Okay, cool. And then, oh, well, then this markdown doesn't support HTML, so that's fine. We'll do italics then. Quickly, right? That's kind of our main focus. Find an idea. Our hackathon. You're so right, I can. I never do that because I always am typing on the bottom and the edit tab is always annoyingly out of the way. But you are right. I should use that feature more often. Quickly find an idea. Our hackathon participants. See, core user are excited to work on. And then one core feature, this will be generating project ideas from a selected emoji and project and participant info. All right, so then your MVP statement is, now when you look at your preview here, right, is an app user picks their mood and instantly adds 3 tailored project ideas with the opportunity to So then this is not even end participant info, right? Even as I'm drafting this, anything that sounds and, trash it. So, and pick 3 final project ideas. That's it. So then our must have, our should have, and our could have, right? So then we have our must have, right? Our should have, our could have, and our probably won't have for now. So what is a must have here, right? We need to have a user interface for selecting an emoji, logic to return 3 project ideas, displaying 3 project ideas in the browser. What's a good should have? A try again button to regenerate ideas with the same emoji. Explanations of common moods. Emojis. We can do then here, right? Like saving favorite ideas, sharing favorite ideas to common social medias, adding information about prior experience. And then finally, your W could be things like user accounts or login, right? Your some built-in team matching based on emojis selected, maybe some AI features. Right, so from there, and then generally we have our, in here, then we will have our MVP blueprint. Cool. So then for our MVP blueprint, I'm going to go ahead and link to a Figma file. Right, so in here, let's go to Figma. I'm going to go ahead and hop off my screen for about 2 seconds while I get logged in and open up a brain file. Also a good time for a water break. Cool. So welcome back, right? So this is my lovely Figma link. Now I'm going to go ahead and press share here. Right, so anyone can now view my Figma here, right? And then I'll go ahead and paste in here. Looks like we got a good question in the chat. I'm going to try and answer while we get set up here. If a hackathon has multiple categories, should we target every category or focus on one? For example, this had a category for MongoDB, Gemini, Auth0. So what should we do? I would say this really does depend. If you want to learn how to use Gemini, go for it. if you are going to, so here's the way that I would recommend doing this. If you are going to be using some way to log in and sign up, you should use Auth0. If you are going to be incorporating AI, you should use Gemini. If you are going to be creating a database, you should use MongoDB. But you should not force your app to have these things. So you should not work on an app idea that is going to incorporate AI and authentication and a fully fledged backend unless that is what you think is the best call for you. So to answer that question, if you are using, like, if you normally are a Firebase person, then, and there's a best use of the MongoDB prize at this hackathon, try to use MongoDB. If you are a Firebase person and there's no best use of MongoDB prize at this hackathon and you want to learn something new and you've heard good things about Mongo, use Mongo. If you are a Firebase person and you love Firebase and you don't feel like experimenting around this hackathon because you really want to win a prize or you really want to push yourself, like, to do the best project you can within 24 hours, then don't use Mongo, right? Like, it kind of depends on the goal that you have when you are coming into the hackathon, which is a lot of different things. Right, so hopefully that answers your question. Don't target every single one for the sake of targeting every single one, but if you are building an AI app that requires authentication in a backend, why not apply to all three? Cool. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna go ahead and create our page here. All right, so this is our first page. Why is it in light mode? I don't like light mode. Light mode makes my eyes hurt. To delete this page as well. Cool. So this is our first page, right, on our lovely little prototype website thing. So then I'm going to go ahead and add in a screen. I'm going to make it size of, right, so when I'm looking at this screen, I'm going to make it 1920 by 1080, all right, which is going to make it super duper small, which is totally fine. I would rather have it be, you know, the correct proportions here, right? So this is, I've decided I'm going to make a web app here, right? So whenever I have something that will scroll, right, this will be the kind of initial part of my web page, right? So then, welcome to our app. At this point, we are not worried about the design. So we're going to make our app mood board. And you know, we'll call it mood board. Why not? I'll make it black. Right, we'll do a much larger size of text. Let's go for like 64. Right, and then we have just some basic inner font for now. So then we have, we're gonna have a little text box. All right, so I don't know how many of you are familiar, but on Mac, for example, if you press the little keyboard button, you can get an emoji library. You can't see mine right now, sadly, which is really lame, by the way, but I digress. But I get a nice little emoji library that you can look at. So in here, what I want to be able to do, right, is especially if we're on mobile, I want to have a user be able to type in an emoji. Type your emoji here. All right. So then type your emoji here, right? We'll still use black text. We'll make it slightly smaller though. I'll give it a size 48. Or then we'll do in here, right? From there, we'll do or select one from my library. You know what? We'll call our app this. that works. Perfect. Mood board, right? Great. So then you select one from the library. Right, in which case then you have a nice long list of different emojis. Right, for example. And then here we have our emojis, right? Can obviously add more. Right, so on and so forth. Right, so then we have our select one from the library. All right, so then this would be a list of all the available emojis. And then in here, right, then we'll have a nice button. So let's go ahead and make a nice little button, right? Obviously this is not so this is what we would call a low fidelity prototype, right? So this is not, you know, making the most beautiful app in existence. Then we're gonna go ahead and get this here, please, with 100% opacity, please. And then I also want effects, not drop shadow, on the rounded corner. I want on the outside in color white, 3 pixel rounded corner. Nope. Because it's D9, D9, D9. That's fine. D9, D9, D9. Cool. The inside. No, that's just a stroke effect. So then I want to have it be style dash with profile. I don't even know how to add in a curved thingy into the, oh wait, no. Now I do. There we go. Perfect. Right, so then in here, I add in a text box, right, that will say, add in a text field into my text box here. Something like generate ideas or get ideas. Now, what in the world this is doing, I could not tell you. So maybe let's get rid of that actually, right? So instead of doing this, right, I'm just adding a text box right here, get ideas. Then drag it right in here. All right, center it within this, and then once I have that, I can select both of these, hopefully. Please. And then I can go ahead and bring this. All right, so now I have a frame here. That's my button. All right, so you type your emoji here. Or you have maybe your, then we'll move this out, move that up. Maybe we want a new rectangle, right? Also moved out up here. Right, well, those rectangles are obviously below rectangle 4, right? So this is a text box, right? Or select one from the library and then get ideas. And then once you are done here, right, what we can do is now we can just kind of click everything that is in this main rectangle. So we can thing. Except for mood board too. Kind of get all of this stuff. I don't want rectangle too much. This stuff, right? Then get ideas. And at the end here, right, I will have my little thing that says ideas. Okay, and then those go in the middle here. I can do idea 1. Right, idea 2. And idea 3. All right, so there you go. So these are your ideas. Then they display right down here. Seeing lots of new people in the chat. So hello, everybody, if you're joining us right now. Excited to see you. All right, so then this is our kind of super initial, what we call a low fidelity wireframe, right? So now if I were to call this, right, if I want to rename this, we'll call this our low fidelity wireframe for MVP. All right, so our low fidelity wireframe for MVP is now also available right on this page. All right, so let's go ahead and go here, then MVP Blueprint, Figma, and then in here, let's go ahead and say during the stream, we created a low fidelity wireframe Figma. Cool. All right, so now when I press publish and commit changes, you should be able to see my wireframe. Right, should link you straight to it, which is pretty great. Believe, yeah. So I have edit access, but obviously you will not, which makes sense. Okay, and then stream resources.md. Want to go ahead and put into here the idea of tech stack, right? So this is technologies we will use for building out the project. This includes the programming languages, frameworks, databases, AI tools that are incorporated but not things we use for development. And then we also have the idea of high fidelity. So I'm gonna go ahead and bold the word tech stack here. And so and then our high fidelity, or well, actually, technically, we'll start with low fidelity wireframes. So these are our very basic layouts of your app, not including any design components. These are often done on paper, but can also be done in any design tool like Figma, Adobe Suite. Cool. And then from there, we go in here, update our stream resources, right? So we have our MVP blueprints with our wireframes and our UI flow, right? So now when we go back to our ideation, we can take a look at our UI flow. right? So we can either write this out into, so now in here, if I do GHW, August 2025, wireframes, right? So now when I'm in here and I'm looking at my GHW 2025 wireframes, of course, right? Let's see here. And that's fine. It's here, right? So then we have our ideas, our mood board, right? And then from here, this is our super basic kind of, low fidelity wireframe for the MVP, right? So type your emoji here or select one from the library. So then as, whenever you want to add a comment or anything, what I would probably do here is go ahead and add in, remember how to add comments in Figma. No, for 100% there's a way. Oh, comment, perfect. So if I want to add a comment, right here I will say, if a user selects an emoji from the library, it should add it to the text box. Users should be able to scroll in the library as MVP feature. All right, then in here, we also have, if we were to, so for MVP, keyboard emoji support only, S or C feature to allow to look up key emojis using keywords. That's what I'm looking for, right? And then this section should only show after the quote unquote get ideas button has been pressed. Cool. All right, so then from here we have our app, and then we will go ahead and go back into our ideation, right? So we have our MVP blueprint, our Moscow method, our MVP determination, right? If I go back here again, take a look at my stream resources, right? Our last step is our tech stack determination. So for determining our tech stack, we are looking at something that we can do relatively quickly, right? Depends on, like, generally your goals. Sorry, your goals, your visions, your ideas, your, everything for the hackathon. So if you are, your goal is to learn as much as possible, then you should go with things that you don't know. However, you should also go with things that you know you can build relatively quickly. So here are the best selection criteria. Your familiarity. Focus on learning or on idea execution. Then your speed to build, which is especially important in hackathons. And then this is the big one: APIs, resources, and mentors. Hackathons will have a lot of mentors. The more commonplace the technology you pick is, the higher chance there is that you will find a mentor or somebody who is willing and able to help you. So then for this example, for our example project, One of the first determinations that you will make generally is web mobile mixture. Here we're going to choose web. So we'll do our front end stack. We will do our back end stack. We will do our data, and we will do our styling. Right, so for the MVP, your data is going to be a static JSON of mood, emojis, to ideas, right? So this is for your M. Then your AI API is for your S or your C. Your backend is, at this point, right, we're just gonna do HTML, CSS, JS. Never have I ever completed MVP without scope creeping in it, pretty much, which is why we're keeping this one super simple. Backend, we'll do Node, JS, Express. Right, we don't need a data layer, right? So this is a really basic modified Merton stack where we're keeping it simple on the HTML, CSS, JS front. We're keeping it simple on the data front. And for styling, we're going to use Tailwind, CSS. Cool. So then let's go ahead and get started on some app setup. So we've figured out, no, I don't want to leave that playing, thank you. We have figured out our tech stacks. We have figured out our MVP blueprint. We've figured out our Moscow method. We have our MVP statement. We have our core users. We have a low fidelity wireframe. So let's go ahead and start with that. Cool. So we have our code here. And then what we're gonna do is we are gonna go ahead and get started on some files. So let's go ahead and set up some very basic initial web page setup. Let's go ahead and head into idea.mvp. We're gonna go ahead and actually organize this stuff a little bit. We're gonna create a new file. We're gonna call this our literature. And this will be our test.md. We're gonna just commit changes. I'm not doing this the best way possible. I'm aware of that, but that is fine. Then I will move stream resources to .md into literature. So then I'll do /literature / stream resources md. So now we're moving this in here. Right, so now this file's out of there. And then we will also go ahead and move ideation.md into our literature folder, right? So literature and then ideation.md. Perfect. And then what we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and open up a new file. So we're going to go ahead and create a new file here. We're going to do our sample project file. And then we're going to do test.md. test.md in here as well. We'll commit changes, create test.md in here. Then when we go to literature, we can now delete this test.md. It's not the only thing in this file. We're going to go ahead and delete this file. Perfect. And when we go into sample project, right, we see test.md is in here as well. And then we have our create new file. All right. So for the start, we're going to just do some very basic HTML, CSS, and JS. We're going to need 3 files. I'm going to go ahead and open up Visual Studio Code at this point. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and change and remove this stage. Present our screen, this one. Cool. This is from our last cool Hack project. Would you look at that? Cool. We're going to close that. Reopen. Hide that. Reopen Visual Studio Code. And then clone a Git repository. Come from GitHub. And then we'll do idea to MVP. And then we'll just save it in my documents folder for now. Open it up. And then in sample project, we're going to do a couple of things. First of all, we get to delete test.md now. Second of all, we're going to in sample project create a new file. Actually, no, we're going to create a new folder. I'll call this folder front end. All right, and then in our front end folder, we're going to go ahead and create a new file. And we're going to call it index.html. All right, then we're also going to create a new file, call it style.css. Styles.css. And then we're also going to create a new file and call it scripts.js or script.js. Cool. So now we have our very basic HTML, CSS, and JS set up for our front end. So now what we're going to do is create a blank HTML file. So if I do Command K, M. All right, I'm looking for HTML. Right, so I've created a new HTML document, right? And then so in here, now when I go into title, go and delete this, we'll do mood. All right, so this is where I can, at this point, go ahead and start kind of combining screens and resources, right? So this is where having a big workspace is super helpful. Not that I, necessarily always recommend for hackers to bring like second monitors and things like that. But it can be super duper helpful. So then in here, right, we can close underline markdown. We can close this because we don't need that. And then we'll go ahead and do this, right? Mood board. Right, which is our lovely app. So that is our title. And then we will have our, of course, our meta, our title, and so on. And then we will also have our link to styles.css here, right? If anyone's curious, I do have, our already starting off with some absolute craziness. We do not need this much work. We're gonna just in our body, I guess start with a header. And then we'll do just a little H1 that says mood board. All right, perfect. And now if I were to go ahead and run this, right, how can I run this HTML file? Run HTML file from VS Code. Oh wait, I'm looking for the HTML preview then. So let me get the HTML preview extension, right? So this is stuff like being able to preview a document. Command K. Cool. So now if I were to do Command K and then V. All right, perfect, right? So then we have our mood board. Awesome. Great, right? So then we have our mood board. And then we have, of course, our main section. Right, so then we're going to go ahead and start off with our main section right in here, right? And then I'll do also another main down here. And then finally, we can go ahead and start off with some labels and then get ideas and then results. All right, on the bottom of our body, we're also going to go ahead and say that our script src is script.js. Very cool. Then end our body and end our HTML tag. Yeah, that's fine. Cool. And then before this, right, so we have our header, we have our main, which is missing a thingy. Very cool. So then when we have here, we could do you know, like where we start our options. So then we could have a section with the ID that says mood, right? And then in here, right, so maybe we could do a select ID mood and the select, right? Then in here, we'll do option value happy, right? But instead of happy, sad, neutral, we'll do our emojis, right? So this is where we're going to do our happy emoji. This is where we'll do our sad emoji. This is where we'll do our neutral emoji, which it's already recommending for us. So we'll go tab, right? So now we have a selector here. So then in here, we have an option value and choose a mood. All right, and then we could also, outside of that, of course, have a label that says for mood, you know, select your mood. And label down here. Then we have our happy mood, sad mood, neutral mood, so on and so forth. All right, and then we have, of course, below this, right, we could have a button. The ID says submit. Right, then ends that section. Right, so then we'll start a section here. And end the section down there. No, not start the section outside of main. So then of course start the section here and this section further down here. Right, then we could have another section that says there the ID is results. right? And then we can also add in a comma. It's like results will be displayed here. Perfect. All right. And then from there, so now, right now I have a choose your mood. And then instead of submit here, we want to do get ideas. Perfect. And then submit those results, and then your results will be displayed here. All right, so then I went ahead and figured out some basic styling to add into this styles.css file to kind of show you all what I had in mind. So now, if we go to HTML, you should be able to see that I have the style sheet attached, which is styles.css. Okay, and I have our header and our footer, so on and so forth. Right now, if I press our Command K and then V, right, perfect. Right, so I have mood board. Select your mood. Get ideas. You can kind of see the button. Sometimes go into different sections, right? And then get ideas. So then if we want to be able to like add things on a different line of code, that is also fine, of course. But from there, let's go ahead and work on a script.js file. So in here, I'm going to add in some sample data, right? So if I'm happy, tired, curious, excited, that's all great in theory, but that doesn't match the emojis I have in here. So then in here, let's go curious. So then for a curious emoji, we're also going with that one. Perfect. Then option value. Value excited. Let's swap the emoji out here. All right, so then in here, when we go to script.js, we press idea. Right, then go ahead and add that. So then so open mood board in a new browser, select pensive, and then press get ideas. Nothing actually shows up in the get ideas box though, which is not exactly what I'm looking for here, obviously. So let's go ahead and try and debug it live. Right, so we try happy, pensive. So now if I refresh the page, right, if I do boom here, perfect, right? Now I'm seeing different ideas based on this, right? So sad is not working. This one is working. This one's working. This one's working. This one's working, right? Cool. Awesome, right? So then in here we have get ideas. So happy, tired. So this one we want to go sad. Now if I refresh the page here, right, if I go sad, should be good to go here. So then in here, should go ahead and do the comment that will say, no. Just say, be displayed here. Perfect, now I refresh the page, got ideas, so on and so forth, right? Cool, awesome, right? So now we have a super basic app for this. So now what we want to do is go ahead and work on moving script.js, right? So using some of our backend tools. Right, so now we have tools that get ideas for specific emojis. If the MVP is just a minimal product, how minimal can it be without turning into a maximal failure? So, I mean, honestly, right, like I started working on this app 20 something minutes ago. Right? We decided on our tech stack 20 minutes ago, and now within 20 minutes, I have a something, right? Ooh. Obviously, what you accomplish within a 24-hour, 36-hour hackathon should be more impressive than this app. But if I could tell you all of the instances in which I've gone to judge projects that do not work, that are not fully fleshed out, that are missing components, that have things hard-coded that they shouldn't, so on and so forth. I would much rather you show me a fully functional app that has half of the features than a broken something. Like, start small, build up, versus start big, trim down. Much easier to start small, build up. Let's go ahead and commit here. And then let's go ahead and say upload sample app to repo. Cool, and let's push this up. Let's go ahead and work a little bit on making this styling match my low fidelity wireframe a little bit more. So So now I'm going to grab my Figma design. I'm going to paste it in here. So then what we're now going to do is we're going to try and go ahead and modify these guys a little bit. So we have our section that's going to be our emoji input for typing in an emoji. Right, and I'm also going to control I here, or is it Command I? Oh, what's a shortcut for fixing indentation on VS Code? Shift Option F. There we go. Cool. Right, so then we have this in here, then the emoji library. They have our emoji buttons. Get our IDs button. Then we have our CSS. Right, then we have our emoji input here, right? So then I will need a section for the emoji input. Then I will need another section for the get ideas button, right? So now if I reopen the app, so obviously this section doesn't work very well right now. Let's go ahead and add it in here. Now if I refresh the page, right, I have to select the mode. You can get ideas from there, right? We have a nice button from there. All right, we've got a decent amount of stuff to do. So then in here we have the starting to the emoji field and fixing button to match low fidelity, right? So styling for the emoji field, text box fixing, styling to match low fidelity wireframes. So now is actually, I think, a pretty great point to discuss like how you would go about dividing up this project if you had more time and more people, right? So ideally there is already a plenty important task here that is mostly going to focus in your HTML and your CSS file of getting somebody to work on the styling of this web page. You have kind of laid out your skeleton as a group. So now you need to work on making it look significantly better. Right? And then you need to work on making it look, you also then need to work on, you know, kind of building out this idea. So then you could have a second person work on setting up the server so that you can kind of make calls on the server to that. You could have a third person work on the AI components, right? So if you're going to be generating app ideas using AI of some sort, then you want to be able to actually go ahead and add those into the app and connect up to the Google Gemini API or OpenAI API or whatever else, right? So that's kind of what you're looking on here in order to kind of get these next steps accomplished. So then if you go to our lovely repository, right? Effectively, I've shown you in an hour and 40 minutes how to build out multiple, like, what are the steps that I go through in order to create an MVP, the things that you need, an example of how we create an MVP that we could realistically complete in, well, 30 minutes, and then actually also gave you a sample project that is completed within 30 minutes, right? Because you can't argue with it. This app right now does work. Is it the most beautiful app in the world? No. Doesn't need to be. Also no. Nobody's going to expect for me to have the most beautiful app in the world after 20 minutes of working on it, or maybe max half an hour, right? When you look at it that way, you are really looking a lot more at the, change the size of my screen here back to what I had it as. But generally, right, that's kind of the goal here. You're not looking for the most beautiful app in the world. You are looking for something that you can build out. So, before we wrap the stream up for today, let's talk a little bit about some of the things you might also need. First of all, I'm going to be open to questions for at least the next few minutes. Second of all, as always, please go ahead and check into mlh.link/GHW feedback. I'm also going to paste this in this MLH resources tab. So this is going to be stream feedback. This is what I use to improve the quality of my streams going forward. So if you are like, I wish this music was off, I wish something was different, I wish that, you know, we got to spend more time on this, or I wish we didn't spend as much time on this, then that is where you go to, you know, air out your grievances. Or, you know, give me some love if you want to. Both of those are totally fine. If you want to look at the repository specifically, there's a nice scroll on the bottom of the GitHub page right now. The MLH GitHub link, or the MLH GHW feedback link, is the same for every stream. So you're just looking for my name and my stream name, which is from idea to MVP, in the nice long list of streams as you get logged in. That's kind of the first thing. Next thing is for what we did, right? We built out our step-by-step guide, talked a little bit about some of the vocab that I used for the rest of the thing. And then in your ideation.md document, this is where we actually built out our hackathon project idea, right? So we talked through what is a common problem, right? Focus on one of those that we talked about. So then we said, okay, we're going to come up with a hackathon project idea generator. I want ideas to be generated based on emojis, tech skills, and overall vibes. We narrowed that down for MVP further to just talk about emojis. So then we said, okay, what sort of ideas do we want for that? Your MVP determination, who is your user, a hackathon participant, what is their need? They need to quickly find an idea that they are excited to work on. What is the feature? You give me an emoji, I give you 3 project ideas. That is your MVP. Talking about your Moscow method, right? Here's what we did. Here are must-have. User selects an interface for an emoji. There's some sort of logic to return 3 project ideas. Those are displayed on the web page. Our M's are done. We can add feature, try again button to regenerate ideas with the same emoji. Explanations of common moods associated with those emojis. Like, is this emoji happy, excited, sad, tired, apathetic, pensive, grumpy? Pick your descriptor, right? Your try again button to regenerate ideas. Like we mentioned, you're saving favorites, sharing favorite ideas to social media, adding information about your product, like your team members' brand experience, tech stacks. Your probably won't be done anytime soon. Your user accounts, your login, your built-in team matching based on emoji selected, AI features with 3 question marks, whatever that might mean. We also worked on a low fidelity wireframe on Figma, right? So we came up with a whole app name, by the way, mood board, right? Where you type in your emoji or you select one from the library, you get your ideas. Does this high fidelity wireframe match this one exactly? No. But it's pretty close, right? We have a button, we have an emoji selector, we have a way to display this information. We also now know what are next steps for us to focus on, right? We also came up with a tech stack. We said we don't need to worry about using React for this one or anything along those lines. We're gonna go plain HTML, CSS, JS. We don't even need to worry about a backend for now, right? We're just gonna make calls straight from the front end to our data. Our data is genuinely static JSON of moods and of mood emojis to ideas. Eventually, we could have an AI API, right? Like a Gemini or a OpenAI that connects it up instead. Styling. Didn't even touch Tailwind CSS at this point too much, right? We just did a super basic layout. Some very, very basic CSS. So That's your example project tech stack, right? So now even this, we can modify it because we did not use a backend. We did not use styling for Tailwind. So we'll just go ahead and commit these changes so that we make sure that these documents are accurate. Next steps for things that I would recommend doing. There are awesome project tracking tools on GitHub. So you can create a GitHub, like a Kanban board, sprint planning within your project here. I know you probably don't have time in a hackathon to like come up with a sprint planning and play sprint playing poker and do a retro and a review and so on and so forth. I'm not asking you for that. I'm asking for you, especially if you are working in a group, to keep track of who is working on what. So if I make a new project, I say, okay, this is our current project. Our current project is styling. Here's what I want. Also, super helpful here, right? We could deploy static files in a repository without a build. Let's try this, right? Let's configure it, see what happens. All right, so this will configure a page, right? Display static content on GitHub pages. All right, let's give it a stab, see what happens here. All right, so now we're working on creating a static.yaml file, right, which is how we'll go ahead and deploy our basic GitHub page to GitHub repository. You can now see if we go into GitHub Actions, we have a static.yaml file that is running. So, right, this repository needs to have pages enabled and it needs to be configured to build using GitHub Actions. So then if I go into settings, right, I can go into things like pages. I can deploy. All right, is this all necessarily going to work out of the box? Of course not. Right, but now I have GitHub pages sources set up here, right? I'm forcing HTTPS. I can publish my GitHub page privately, which does not matter too much to me right now, right? But I can go ahead and work through this step and try to figure out how to get an API, right? So then, let's see, display index.html in GitHub pages. All right, so you can go ahead and attempt to rerun this, right? Rerun all the jobs, see what happens. See if we can even successfully get it to deploy. If we can't, that's fine, but at the very least, we're trying something new. Very quickly, we can go ahead and, work on seeing whether these, at the very least, right, now I've already upgraded my project a little bit because I'm not just limited to localhost. Great, I've created a static.yaml file. Now if I look at my deployments and I go to my GitHub pages, right, it says my file's not found. That's normal, as it takes a couple of minutes to get everything working. But boom, right? Now everybody can go ahead and access my app at this lovely link, right? Hopefully in a couple minutes, which will be probably right around when the stream ends. So I'm going to go ahead and leave the floor open for any questions for the next few minutes. Outside of that, we'll go ahead and stop there. I will see you all in September probably for GHW, right? Because I'm not on for any other stream. Yeah, it'll be Global Hacking Data next time around, so that'll be fun. But yeah, make sure you join us at GHW for the rest of GHW Beginners Week, and also for GHW Data. Super fun events coming up generally. But as always, make sure you give us some feedback also at emily.link/GHW feedback. Check in everywhere else. And as always, thank you all so much for coming, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.